To remove the thermostat, which is up in here, there are 3 E10 Torx screws, one there, one on the other side over here, and one up the top there. The two on this side on the left, as we're looking at it from here, hold on this cover here because there's an electrical connection underneath here. So what we need to do is remove those 2 screws first, take off the cover, and then disconnect the electrical connection, and then it gives us a bit easier access to the one that's back here. And then we're going to pull the thing out, and it's a bit of a funny thermostat. It's a little bit different to pretty much any thermostat that I've ever dealt with before. Normally thermostats sort of have a flat plate that sort of moves back and forth. What this has is it's actually sort of a cylinder that sort of moves back and forth. And on the inside, up in here, there is a sealing ring, which this thing slides in and out of. And when we move this thing out, it's really jammed up inside here with this big rubber ring, which is holding everything in place. What I don't want to do is pull this thing out at an angle because it's going to break the sealing ring on the inside. What I want to do is pull that out evenly. And there are a couple of positions on the outside here which enable us to get screwdrivers underneath here and lever this out in a controlled, even manner so we don't damage the sealing ring on the inside. Because if the sealing ring gets damaged and you have to replace that, that's going to be a real pain. You need to lower the engine. We need some special tools like a slide hammer to remove it, but then to install it correctly requires some special tools as well. So just be a little bit careful as we're pulling that thing out. If you don't have an E10's torque, and also my E10 is a 3/8, and either an 8mm or a 5/16 will just slot over those perfectly, and generally they're going to be a little bit smaller, which will give you a little bit more room in here to undo things. There's the cover there. After it's been removed, that would have sat over there like that, and that away like that there. And now we can remove the electrical connection. Just on the end here, there's a little tab that needs to be pushed down, and then that thing can pop off. Like that. And now we can remove that last screw there on the right hand side. And once you get those 3 screws out, we're going to lever it out. And the 2 positions we're going to lever it out at are that one there. I'm going to use that lug there, so I'm going to lever up like that, and that one in there. So I'm going to lever that one. I'm going to do it with 2 screwdrivers at the one time. There we go. Now that has popped out quite easily because I've had it out before. It required a little bit of force, and you can see this big rubber seal on the inside here. That's not the sealing ring. The sealing ring still is sitting inside about here somewhere. This is the seal at the front. This was sort of all stuck to it. So it'll require a bit of force, but the secret is to pull it out evenly. Now we need to get this thing out because there's not much room here. And what I've found is the best way to do this is just to release this pipe, because what I need to do is be able to push this a little bit this way. The way I release that pipe, there's a little sort of barbie thing in here which I'm going to push back on that clip to allow that to come free like that. So there's that barb there. We're going to push that in like that, and you can leave that like that. And I just need a little bit extra room, and I'm going to orientate when I pull my thing out. You have to maneuver it around a little bit here. I want to have this so it's like that. So I need this in between the housing and the coolant pipe. I want the thermostat electrical connector pushing away, like pointing away from me. And then what I'm going to do is have this pointed down. And then if I just push this way a little bit, it just pops out like that. So there's your thermostat there. And I'm not sure how much you can see of this, but the sealing ring that you're pulling it clear of is that one inside there. And it's quite a hard little plastic seal that has hooks that sort of point back towards you on the inside. Here's a bit of a close-up of the thermostat. When it was sitting there in the car, it's going to look like that. Obviously the 3 screws there on that hold that thing on. And the way this works, this piece here is the bit that moves, this cylinder here. So when it moves forward, it opens up a gap inside here that allows water or the coolant to flow in between, and then go to the front, because a single connection from the front of the car, which is the outlet from the radiator pipe, just sort of coming in this way. You got the sealing ring about there, so it's pushing in here, and then as soon as this moves forward, the sealing ring is still going to be around here, and then it's going to move like that as this thing moves forward and allows the coolant to flow to the engine. To get access, or to pull everything off here, we've just got this little baby seal at the front here. You can just run a screwdriver around there and just gently pry that off. And the way it works is there is a little sort of a lip in there that's going to go onto this little bit in here. So when you're fitting this, make sure everything's nicely lubed up. It's going to go over the top like that. And once it's on there like that, you'll need to make sure that you feed this bit in here, that it's hard up against here. And I found the best way to do that is sort of just to fold this whole thing back like that and then slide it forward. Like that, so you can see that that bit in there is hard up against the surface there that it's going to mate into. And then once it's like that, then we can roll that forward like that. And what you should see is this is now nice and flat all the way around here. If it wasn't engaged in that lip, then this would be sort of bowing out this way. When you're installing this into the car, it's quite a tight fit around here. So what you want to do is put it into place. When you first put it in there, the sealing ring is going to be sitting about here, and it's going to hit it. You need to move it in. It'll still have a gap in here, so you'll be able to feel it actually move into the correct spot on the sealing ring. And then we can push it up so it's sort of hard up against the first bit of this rubber seal. And then what I want to do is push this in evenly. And the way I did this was I didn't have the cover on to start off with. I just got the 3 screws and then just evenly pulled it into the correct position. And then once I got it all the way seated, then I removed the 2 screws that hold onto the cover and then put the cover back on, and then I'm going to torque those down to 13 Newton meters. Try to install, because it's really hard to see this, you could maybe use a mirror, but if you just get your finger in here, just run your finger around there and check that there's no damage to that sealing ring. Then I'm going to fit this in here. Again, the opposite of before, make sure just with these lugs, I find that if you just point the electrical connection away from you and slot it up in there like that, and then pull that forward, that'll slot into place, and then we can rotate this around. And I can feel it hit the sealing ring there, so I can now just sort of slot that up into place. So now it's seated in there nicely. And then I can put those 3 screws in and just gently tighten those so they go in evenly, so we don't do damage to the sealing ring, and that rubber seal at the front goes in nice and evenly. If you're going to do work on the cooling system anywhere back here, you'll need to drain the coolant from the system. The way we do that is we're going to remove that plug there from the coolant regulator housing, let that drain out on install. That takes 25 Newton meters. There'll be a small aluminium washer in there, or a sealing ring that you'll need to replace if you want to. I've reused those before, no problems at all, entirely up to you. Additionally, there's a little plastic plug that needs to come out of that pipe there. When you put that back in, that's just got a little rubber sealing ring that does not need to be super tight. You just hand tight that into it so it's firm, and the risk there is if you put it in too tight is to split this thing in here, so be a bit careful with that. You also need to remove these hoses here from the 2 coolant pipes that go to the front there. The way to do that is to get a tool to squeeze these clips together. I just use something like this. You just put that in there like that. And then just plonk it over there. And then what I find is that these pipes are always really stuck on. And so I found the best way to do this is just get a pry tool like this and stick it up in here and get it open, but then sort of just run it around on each side and really dig it all the way down here, because that hose, and you'll be able to feel how far it goes down, but it'll be stuck to it. So you need to really get that all the way in. As you're doing that, lots of coolant and stuff will dribble out, which is good because then it'll actually help lubricate it and get it off later on. But you'll need to sort of unseal that, and I find a tool like that is probably best for that job. And then they can come off. And the reason they stick is because they use a lubricant which is water-based to put these things on, and then that all just washes away. So that's gone and everything's really dry and it sticks quite hard to it. Then if you want to, you can remove these hoses, which is pretty simple. You've got a big ring on these, which you can see that just pull off. Most of the time they don't want to pull off. You can just pull them over the side like that. Then that just comes off. Note the orientation of that before you take it off, because it only goes on one way. Some of them have the little ting point inwards, some of them have it point outwards, depending on which connection you're looking at, so take note of that. And then to remove these, there's a little flange on, which is part of the hose itself. And if you sort of push on one side, it'll open up a bit of a gap. But what we don't want to do is just leave that out, because these are quite fragile and it'll just bend it and muck it up a little bit. So what you want to do is, as you're sort of levering it, you want to be giving this a bit of a wiggle, and we're sort of leave it. Now that's come off before and it's all lubricated, but it'll be really stuck down there. There's a big O-ring here that will need to be unseated from down inside that housing. And all the same, but don't just reef these out. You just gently twist as you're wiggling. I found that's probably the best way to do it. And once you pull this out, I would just get a small pick tool, remove the O-ring, clean everything up, because there's probably going to be some dried coolant and stuff in there. Just clean all that and put a bit of grease in there to put everything back on. Well, I use grease. There's a special, like I said before, a particular gel, a water-based gel that they use. I've used grease on these for years with no problems at all, and it just makes it easier to pull them off next time. But to install, make sure you have all of this lubricated, the inside of here lubricated. The clip needs to be in the correct position, so seated. You can put your finger in here and press that it's in the slot, and it's going to engage with these positions here. And then all you need to do is just push it into place and click it in. And make sure you wiggle it back and forth to make sure it engages both top and bottom.